Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Elizati binti Muhammad Jamal, and today I want to present about the introduction of liberalism. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know where the word liberal is derived from? So, the word liberal is derived from the Latin word liber, which means freedom or liberty. Freedom is always associated with the word liberal, which means that people will have freedom in respect of their selection of alternative and pursuit of thoughts and ideas. So, what is actually liberalism? Liberalism is a political ideology whose main concern is to protect and enhance liberty of individuals. Liberalism, in political perspective, is a moral conception concerned only with the basic structure of a society and presented as a view that is independent of any comprehensive doctrine. So, we can say that as political ideology, liberalism means to pursue policies of freedom in political and economic spheres and clear restrictions on the activities of state authority. Next, liberalism in economic perspective is based on the principles of personal liberty, private property, and limited government interference. For example, free trade, deregulation of the economy, lower taxes, privatization, labor market flexibility, opposition to trade unions, and indifference toward economic inequality. Let's move to the next section. Okay, who is the father of liberalism? Yes, John Locke. John Locke is the father of liberalism. Why he is commonly known as a father of liberalism? It is because he spotlights his pioneering ideas about equality, individual rights, and the role of the state, which helps lay the foundation for modern societies. He claimed that states have rights derived from individual right to life and liberty, which is political independence, and property, which is territorial integrity, thereby providing the liberal foundations of international law. John Locke was born in Winton, a village in England, in 1632. Locke died in 1704 at age 72. So, we move to the next topic, which is modern liberalism. As an ideology, modern liberalism is generally considered to be at the center of economic spectrum and is based upon the idea of a mixed economy that includes elements from both the left and right. It first emerged out of the late 90s and early 20th centuries with the rise of socialist movements and values that swept across Europe and North America at the time. Historians consider the emergence of socialism and modern liberalism as response to some of the appalling conditions present in classical liberalism societies of the Industrial Revolution. Modern liberalism was preceded by classical liberalism, and both are part of liberalism as an ideology.
Now, I want to explain about how modern liberalism evolved from classic liberalism. So, as we know, classic liberalism is a concept that highlights the concept of laissez-faire, which is the free intervention of government in all economic activity. And as we know, classic liberalism support free market and capitalism. But eventually, this laissez-faire concept had failed to provide freedom to all as prescribed in the concept of liberalism itself, where it aims to provide freedom to all person that practices it. This can be seen in the event of Great Depression, the Great Depression in 1930s, that is assumed as the worst economic recession in the history. So because of that, the theory of modern liberalism is developed, and it highlights the concept of Keynesian economic activity, whereby it means that in all economic activity, there will be government intervention. So how do this Keynesian economic activity can help to provide freedom to all? So with the assist of the policy from the government, it can help to manage the aggregate demand and at the same time to curb economic problems such as recession and unemployment. So therefore, from that it can provide freedom to all persons.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Naili Adlina binti Muhammad Riza. I will present to you about the international event of the new liberalism, or known as the modern liberalism. New liberalism, or known as modern liberalism, began on late 19th century and early 20th century. This ideology exists to advocate the role of government in facing the issues on economic and social, which the role it said was authorized. The modern liberalism shift from egotistical individualism towards more to developmental individualism. Rather than focus to freedom to seek their own individual goals, the concept of the new ideology is more to focus on individual personal growth. These rights were similar to the ones associated with classical liberalism, but new liberalism offered working class people the chance to acquire positive freedoms, to achieve property rights and levels of health, liberty, and happiness similar to those enjoyed by the better off in society. Okay, I would like to tell you guys a little bit even of liberalism so that you guys will remember it. In 20th century, modern liberalism has given impact towards Liberal Party in Britain. According to the People's Budget by Lloyd George in year 1909, a national insurance were introduced to cover sickness, unemployment, and pensions. There is no record to prove the basis of the post in year 1945 about the social democratic concurrence emerged from the two new liberals, which is the first is William Beveridge, the architect of the welfare state, or known as 1942 White Paper, and John Maynard Keynes, the apostle of state management of demand in the economy to ensure full employment, or known as 1944 White Paper. Another event we can refer is the disputes between United States and Mexican at Veracruz in year 1914. The objectives of American is to take up the Veracruz and neighboring Tampico, and then they blocked the east coast of Mexico, and it is said until American proved their honor. However, the President Woodrow Wilson's liberal believed it was the duty of United States toward Mexican people.
Next, I'm going to explain about the theory of modern liberalism. The three focus variants of liberal theory are determined by the type of particular state choice, its variations, and its effect on state behavior. Liberal theory is a paradigmatic alternative that theoretically differs from and in certain aspects is analytically more fundamental than existing paradigms such as realism, institutionalism, or constructivism. Among the three core assumptions of liberal theory are the nature of societal actors, the nature of state, and the nature of international system. I'm going to explain about the first assumptions of liberal theory, that is, the nature of societal actors. In fact, liberal theory, as reflected by liberal philosophers and social scientists, relies on the opposite premise. Social demands are variable, changing with factors such as technology, geography, and culture. The harmonious pattern of interest associated with liberal utopianism is nothing more than an ideal endpoint. In almost all social situations, the shift of control over material resources, authoritative values, and opportunities for social control has domestic and transnational distribution consequences which almost always make winners and losers. Moreover, while the average individual may be reluctant to take risks, certain individuals may be willing to take costly conflict risks or impossible profits. Thus, any liberal theory must define a more concrete situation in which the interests of social actors converge towards a particular pattern than those of other societies. Second one is the nature of the state. States represent the demands of a subset of domestic individuals and social groups. Based on their interests, they determine the choice of state and act instrumentally to handle globalization. 2. Analyzing international politics, an important feature of a country is the underlying set of priorities of the level arrangement between potential substantive outcomes or states of the world that may arise as a result of international political interaction. The state acts instrumentally in world politics to achieve certain goals on behalf of individuals whose personal behavior cannot achieve goals efficiently. Internationally, the liberal state is the actor of the purpose, but domestically it is the representative institution that is always subject to capture and recapture, construction and reconstruction by a combination of social interests. This is a critical transmission belt where the choices and social power of individuals and groups are translated into foreign policy. In the liberal concept of domestic politics, state preferences regarding the management of globalization reflect a shift in social demands, which in turn reflect a shift in the structure of domestic and transnational society. By deriving state preference from social preference is an important central theoretical task of liberal theory. Thirdly, the nature of the international system. Liberals argue that interdependent patterns of choice are among the most basic structures that influence state behavior. In areas of modern life where basic externalities remain low and unilateral policies remain optimal for most countries, there are incentives for sovereignty to remain the norm and countries to live side by side with low conflict and politicization. Where policy coordination can produce profits along with low distributional consequences, there are incentives for international policy coordination or concentration. By using relative intensity or asymmetrical interdependence between state priorities, liberalism highlights the conception of power between states. According to Baldwin 1979, in this view, a state's willingness to spend resources or make concessions in bargaining is a function of choice, not as in realism, a relationship with a group of independent political resources.
I will explain about why is the modern liberalism is more relevant than the classical liberalism. First of all, what is classical liberalism? Classical liberalism is a political philosophy and ideology that emphasizes on securing freedom of individual by limiting the power of the government. On the late of 18th century, the classical liberalism idea was selected from the philosophers such as John Locke, Adam Smith, Thomas Malthus, and David Ricardo. The philosophy appears when the Industrial Revolution and urbanization happened in 19th century, which happened in the Europe and United States. The ideology is to promote the civil liberties, with a limited government under the natural law, private property, and they believe on the laissez-faire economic policy. Also, the idea of it is a psychological understanding on individual liberty, the contradictory of theory on natural law and utilitarianism, and a belief in progress. In contrary, because there is a contemporary challenges in the practice of classical liberalism leads to expand to the modern liberalism in the late 19th century. During the Industrial Revolution has given a lot of wealth for some people, but also opens up a great spread of slums, poverty, ignorance, and disease. Besides that, industrial working class were disadvantaged with low payment, a larger gap to unemployment, and degrading living condition that is called social inequality that become difficult to ignore. Also, it is to unrestrained capitalism that give rise to the poverty and injustice. These contemporary challenges has leads to the negative freedom that effectively to be freedom to starve. The effect of the classical liberalism has expanded to the modern liberalism to be more conservative and social liberalism. This means by that the classical liberalism doesn't change much, but put up in a new arrangement with the interference of the government or state. Therefore, it is to enabling the state to interfere in both social and economic life. This means by that the state has a social responsibility to remove or reduce a person that has been disadvantaged others in economics. State are to ensure the economic deliver sustainable growth and keep the unemployment low. Besides that, the ideology is to believe that the state are to help individuals to help themselves and to make the economic management are more necessary done based on the market principle.
Liberalism was the ideology that justifies bourgeois capitalism, and this view has animated much discussion of liberalism to the present day. The argument presented here differs from this view in two important respects. It is based distinction between philosophy or theory, on the other hand, ideology on the others. A distinction which is not made as clearly made in Marxism. So, in conclusion, it is clear that a liberal concept of the rule of law confirmed to the basis that liberalism itself rests on, that is, the protection of an individual but prevalence of the other constitutional doctrine, such as parliamentary sovereignty and separation of power, that affect the application of the rule of law. That is all from us. Thank you.